Microsoft InfoPath is a software application for designing, distributing, filling and submitting electronic forms containing structured data. Microsoft initially released InfoPath as part of Microsoft Office 2003 family. The product features a WYSIWYG form designer in which the various controls are bound to data, represented separately as a hierarchical tree view of folders and data fields. On January 31, 2014, Microsoft announced that InfoPath was discontinued. The client application is supported until April 2023. Features: in order to use InfoPath to fill in a form, a designer must develop an InfoPath template first. According to Gene Paley, one of his developers, a key architectural design decision was to adhere to the XML paradigm of separating the data in a document from the formatting. A patent filed in 2000 by Adriana Nagu and Gene Paley describes the technology as authoring XML using DHTML views and XSLT. All the data stored in InfoPath forms are stored in an XML format, which is referred to as the data source. The form template must have one primary data source for submitting data and can have multiple secondary data sources for retrieving data into the form. Secondary data sources can be built into the form or they can be accessed through an external data connection to SharePoint or a web service. InfoPath provides several controls to present data in the data source to end users. For data tables and secondary data sources, repeating table, and other repeating controls are introduced. Template parts and ActiveX controls can also be added as custom controls in the designer. For each of these controls, actions can be bound in. Rules come in three types: formatting rules such as hiding or coloring a control, validation rules, and action rules such as setting a field's value based on other fields. Rules can be triggered either by a user action such as clicking a button or by the evaluation of various conditions such as field values. For example, a conditional rule could be, set field total to 100 when field 1 is not blank. Paradigm rules apply specific actions when triggered by button clicks or changing values in the form. They can change the values of fields in the data source, submit to and query databases, display messages, open and close forms, and switch to different views of the form. Data validation tests the validity of input into fields by comparing the input to patterns, checking for the correct data type, and in other customizable ways. Conditional formatting can be used to change the appearance or visibility of objects based on values in the form. InfoPath has many different ActiveX controls, all of which have a value bound to a field in the form's data source. Common controls include list boxes, radio buttons, text boxes, buttons, and checkboxes. InfoPath also uses controls such as calculated values, which display the result of XPath expressions, and sections, which are containers for other controls. InfoPath also includes repeating fields and sections, which can store many different values. XPath expressions and functions can be used to calculate values by applying functions to the value of fields in the form, such as concat, string, field 1 plus field 2. Field 3. XPath functions for manipulation of strings, simple mathematical operations, and many other operations are included in InfoPath. In addition, data can be filtered. InfoPath supports connections to external data sources. SQL, Microsoft Access, and SharePoint databases can be connected to and submitted in the form. Script, Visual Basic, C, and other languages can be used to extend InfoPath's capabilities by adding custom HTML task panes, iterating through data, using Active Directory, and generally accomplishing tasks that are impossible in the InfoPath design environment. SharePoint integration. User roles can customize a user's experience by changing views or using conditional formatting based on the identity of the user. InfoPath's formatting capabilities and user interface are similar to Microsoft Word 2003 and 2010, depending on version. Usage. InfoPath is used to create forms to capture information and save the contents as a file on a PC or on a web server when hosted on SharePoint. InfoPath can be used to access and display data from divergent sources and have rich interactive behaviors based on rules, conditions and actions. An InfoPath form requires the client to have InfoPath Filler or InfoPath Designer installed, or by viewing the form in a browser when hosted on SharePoint. InfoPath is mostly used in business rather than by individuals, as it is a collaboration tool used to gather data from multiple individuals in a structured method, and to deploy requires either a SharePoint host and/or individual licensed filler copies. InfoPath forms can be viewed on mobile devices if viewed from a browser or by using a third-party product. To run as a web browser form, the file needs to be uploaded to a server running InfoPath Forms services. The advantage of this is the client doesn't need InfoPath, just a web browser. The form can then be set up to be emailed when completed, or its fields can be added directly to a SharePoint list. Integration with SharePoint. One common use of InfoPath is to integrate it with Microsoft SharePoint technology. InfoPath forms can submit to SharePoint lists and libraries, and submitted instances can be opened from SharePoint using InfoPath Filler or third-party products. Alternatively, InfoPath Forms Services enables a browser-enabled InfoPath form to be hosted on a SharePoint installation and rendered as an HTML page with client-side script and post-back behaviors similar to an ASP.NET page. In SharePoint, a form library is a document library having an InfoPath template as the designated document type. InfoPath fields can be promoted when publishing to SharePoint so they can be read and displayed as a column data in a library view. As with other SharePoint documents, InfoPath forms can have workflows associated with them that can access the promoted fields. Server-side components. Forms Server 2007 is discontinued product that converts InfoPath client forms into AJAX HTML forms that can be accessed and filled out using any browser, including mobile phone browsers. Forms Server 2007 supports using a database or other data source as the backend for the form. It requires Microsoft Windows SharePoint Services 3.0 and the .NET Framework version 2.0. InfoPath Forms Services takes over the features of Forms Server 2007, allowing InfoPath forms to be hosted in a SharePoint website and served via web browser. Originally a component of Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007 Enterprise Edition, in 2013, it was made available with SharePoint Online Plan 2, Office 365 E3G3 or higher, SharePoint Server 2013 Enterprise CAL. On January 31, 2014, Microsoft said they are discontinuing InfoPath Forms services. Versions. References. External links. Official blog,